Welcome everyone to the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call where we present in Microsoft speakers today. Today is October the 31st. Happy Halloween to everyone. And as we get started, my name is Fabian Williams and I will be your host today, substituting for Vesa. And I am joined today by David Warner as usual. Today's agenda is going to be a lot of continuation in terms of a series that we've been doing. But before we get started, we go through a few updates before we get to the real stars of the show, who's going to be Wahlin, continuing his presentation. I think last week he did making a phone call with Azure Communication Services. This week he'll be doing sending emails and SMS messages with ACS. We also had Mounika and Waldek last week speak about bringing your external content to M365 with Graph Connector. And today they'll be deploying said solution, a custom Graph Connector as well. And we also have a presenter external, Robert Perillo, who's going to be talking about the best together solution from the Power AI hack winner. But, as we grow our audience, week over week, we usually have a ton of new people joining. And I want to ensure that everyone knows how to get started with Microsoft 365 development. So we, of course, in this community call, we have, this in addition to others, where we have a tons of community videos that are out there. I believe 44,000 is what Vesa quoted last week. And that you can actually get to that at ak.ms/community/videos. We also have a community also in LinkedIn, and we encourage you to join that as well. And we have a lot of our stuff, which is open sourced, the community contributed, also from Microsoft, that's inside GitHub. Or if you are a little bit intimidated by GitHub, you're just going to some place and seeing code and seeing, just a README file and don't know how to get started or where to find what. We do have a lot of this, front-ended in a sampler gallery that you can get to in ak.ms/community/samples, where you can actually just type in what you're looking for, whether it's around Teams, SharePoint Framework, Power Platform, Microsoft Graph, and or the person that that actually created it, and it'll just surface there for you and link back into GitHub more than likely. However, if all of these are hard to remember, just go to ak.ms/community/home and you basically get taken to there. In addition to this call that happens every Tuesday, we also have additional calls that are on a bi-weekly or monthly cadence. We encourage you to visit ak.ms/community/calls in order to find all of these calls out and their intervals. And we also publish the agenda and social media in ak.ms/community/meetup. Now, just as Robert is going to be presenting today, we encourage our community to join in and presenting in our calls. Community means everyone, so we want you to certainly get involved. Not for marketing or not for sales, but just to highlight the technical arena around it. And in order to do that, just go to ak.ms/community/request/demo, and we encourage you to see, just show up here and showcase your technology. Now, as you're getting into these technology showcases, you need a place to build, need a place to test, and we have that for you. So we got you covered there. So you could go to ak.ms/m365/dev program to get a free E5 developer tenant, and this will auto renew for you every 90 days as long as you're using it for development purposes. And in addition to that, if you want to have a scripted recipe cookbook way of learning and actually getting started, because sometimes a blank IDE can be intimidating, we do have a tons of Learn modules that are there for you. I know Waldek's here, Dan's here, they contribute a ton to that as well. And just go to ak.ms/m365/dev/learn. And for the Power Platform, it's Power Platform/learn. So tons of examples driven by Microsoft and also the community in terms of how to get scripted ways of getting from zero to hero without falling prey to any debug consoles. We also have podcasts that are available to you as well, and other community presentations. For me, when I go on my walks, I usually tune into at least one of these podcasts for my journey. So we have the PNP Weekly that's hosted by Waldek and Vesa. We have Mondays at Microsoft hosted by Carwan and Heather. We also have the Power Platform Connections with David here on the call and Hugo, and we also have the M365 Developer Podcast, which is hosted by my manager, Jeremy Thake, along with Paul Schaefer or Aicha Bass. And they have different frequencies, but just check out the podcast for the availability and schedule for the latest one. Now, we touched on samples before, and we have over 1,700 samples last count that you can actually access from ak.ms/community/samples. And if you're a little bit intimidated by that, we do have a way for you to, get started. And that's part of our Sharing is Caring initiative that David can talk about.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's funny. All those samples come from one person, and that's Vesa. That's why he's not here today. We got him locked up to create more, right? Just kidding. It comes from all of you in the community. And so how can you do that? Well, you contribute to GitHub in a variety of capacities. But sometimes, as Fabian mentioned, that could be intimidating. So we're getting new dates set up for coming up in November and December. We are looking to scale this out. We got videos created. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes that will be seen soon. So definitely keep a lookout for that and get involved. Check out ak.ms/sharing is caring. Then when you do submit and contribute, we want to recognize you. You've been seeing all those cool badges on the X sphere, Twitter sphere, whatever it is anymore, on LinkedIn, Hacktoberfest. Today's the last day, everybody. So go get those contributions in. You still have time. Tomorrow, we move into the season of giving. So moving through those slides pretty quick there, aren't we, Fabian?
I know, I'm sorry. Oh, let me go back.
Definitely get involved. Definitely opt in. It is no cost to get involved on the recognition program. We take care of all of the costs for you. And we just need you to opt in, ak.ms/community/recognition. All right, Fabian, back to you.
I know, man. I got trigger happy on that, so that is definitely my fault for throwing you off your game. I apologize. I should do this more often.
The digital form of Oscar music, right?
I know.
We're moving on. Thank you for your contribution.
I know. So happening now in Chicago, and I know a few folks, MVPs and RDs that I know from over the other side of the world are actually here presenting at this event, but we have EduCon that's happening right now in Chicago, October 30th through November 3rd. So, hopefully that you're there and you're getting tons of, good presentations from all of the speakers, MVPs, RDs, and Microsoft, and everybody in the community that you know and love. In addition to that, coming up next month, actually, it's not even next month, it's tomorrow, right? So tomorrow starts November, but November the 14th through 17th, both in person and virtually, we have the Microsoft Ignite conference. So get to your experience around the AI transformation that's happening at Microsoft there, get your fill of that. I know a ton of people here on my team and others are eagerly, hunkered down. You can't even get FaceTime with them anymore because they're prepping for Ignite. So hopefully some of you will be there in person, if not joining virtually. And starting next year, to kick us off, we have April the 30th, May the 1st and 2nd. We have the Microsoft 365 conference in Orlando, Florida. So nice and warm. And we encourage you to come there to see a ton of keynotes from Jeff, from Caruana, from others, from Adam. And we hope to see you there as well in sunny Florida. Now, in addition to the conferences that are put on by these larger events, we do like to highlight our community events that are out there at https:/communitydays.org. These are happening all over the world. We have some here highlighted in Manila, in Barcelona, in Pune, India, in Mexico City. Here also in the United States, in the Twin Cities, all coming up here between October and November. So we encourage you to, if you're in these areas, to check these out. You usually have a lot of these presenters that you see at these major conferences, like I talked about EduCon, and also M365 and also the Ignite. Some of these also do a ton of community work. This is one of the reasons why they maintain their MVPs and their RD statuses, is by doing these events. So you go there, you actually have a smaller audience, it's more intimate, and you can definitely ask a ton of questions. Now, as we transition into some of the news from Microsoft this week, we have a lot. I will actually paste a lot of these links. Oh, thank you. You actually did the work for me. I was actually going to. It's Brooklyn Park. We'll definitely fix that. So tons of links in here. So I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just want to call out a few ones that I know that are really important to me, because I'm in these calls, or I get these emails every day. Patrick Rogers put out recently a transition to the Microsoft Graph search endpoint for OneDrive and SharePoint. Definitely pay attention to that, because there is that that journey as we move away from more legacy or classic APIs into the Microsoft Graph, which is the team that I'm on. So pay attention to that blog post. We have information coming around Exchange. We have Namdi, one of the colleagues in a sister team that I work with, talking about boosting your visibility with M365, and Waldek on the call speaking about, surprise, Microsoft Graph Connector, because Connector is in Waldek. I think every day I wake up, there's something new in either the Twitter sphere or the X sphere, whatever they call it now, with Waldek talking about a ton of samples that he really put blood, sweat, and tears into churning out there in terms of Microsoft Graph Connector, which is a good foray into your experience with Copilot in your building in or building with scenarios. We also have news on the front of Microsoft Teams, where we have Noga Rogan talking about creating focused collaboration on Microsoft Teams. We have Karen Alvarez talking about bring your own devices and different entry-level ways of doing that. So as we live in this hybrid environment where people are in person, people are online, such as we're doing here today. Sometimes you're bringing your own devices into these rooms and you want to have a great experience, in order to capture that in-person feel as much as possible, being able to have that communication, just as you would face-to-face. So great article, actually read through. There's a good video in there as well. And also Harish talking about using workflows in terms of Microsoft Teams as well too. On the bottom right, we see some information around Viva, focusing on finance. In terms of some of the sites in the industry, calling out some trends that are there. And Mark Cashman has actually 2 news articles. One, as I mentioned before, I think I loosed it maybe prior to us recording. I'll be actually in Amsterdam in a few more weeks. I guess, it is few because it's more than 2. I'm speaking actually alongside Vesa in one session around Teams and Graph Connectors and Copilot extensibility. And I'll be doing another one around AI with Microsoft Graph, Semantic Kernel, and Python with my actual daughter. She'll actually be doing more of a presentation this time than the last time where she had a demo. This time she actually has a section. So looking forward to seeing you there if you're going to be there. And also Mark is met with what's his name again? I have it written down here, with Keith McGrain in his podcast in the Internet Zone. And now we actually invite Wajid to come and talk to us a little bit around the Teams platform updates.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. So today's update is on API-based message extension. Message extensions built using API use a web service to manage users' requests and responses and don't require a bot registration or a bot framework. You can configure and deploy API-based message extension using Teams Toolkit. API-based message extension help your app to interact directly with third-party data, apps, and services, enhancing its capabilities. To build API-based message extension, you need to update manifest file to specify type, API specification, and response template file. These are additional fields we have added. You need an open API definition in the form of YAML or JSON. You need a response template file, which defines how responses should be rendered, including the preview card, and an API endpoint, which will serve the data required. Teams Toolkit allows you to create and run API-based message extension from scratch. Please give it a try. If you have any feedback or suggestion, please post it on ak.ms/Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also configure to the RSS feed to get regular platform updates. Thank you. Back to you, Fabian.
Thank you, Wajid. Appreciate the Teams update. So we move now into our optional picture time. So let me go ahead and put back on this region. Let me go ahead and also drag this over here and move into, what is it, gallery mode? Oh, they moved it. There it is.
View, under view.
And,
yeah, there you go.
View and together mode. There we go. No view. And let's go with this guy here today. Amphitheater. Is it gonna work? Oh. I know. Hold on.
So give it a second.
Work.
Sometimes it let me see if it shows up for me. Let's see what we got. Teams is definitely a little slow today.
I know. Hold on. Let's change this up a little bit here. Oh, come on. Teams, don't do this to me today.
No, it's showing up black for me too. I'm not like just a blank area on my screen for that, which is kind of interesting.
That's that. When you're at Microsoft and you're on these different rings, man, I swear. So I'm not going to hold up the call for this, actually. Maybe we don't have picture mode today. So it's not working for you, so we can switch sharing?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and move on. It's not loading for me at all.
It is not loading. All right. So you know what, Vesa, I apologize. I tried, and also David tried. So let's go ahead and actually get this out of the way here. And we actually now will move into the real stars of the show. So Don Wahlin is going to kick us off by talking about sending emails and SMS messages to Azure Communication Services. Dan.
All right. It is great to be back for, what are we on now? I think we're on session 8, I believe. So good to be back with everyone this week. And we're going to talk about yet another item that can really, I think, take your apps to the next level with, in this case, communication. And that is sending email and SMS messages. So a real quick recap for you. I'm going to run through the demo again. Those that are here every time, you've seen this and you're probably like, okay, Dan, I get it. But for those that might not have made it every time, I'll run through kind of what we're after here in just a moment. So let me go ahead and move on. And what we've covered up to this point in our now 8th session is we started with AI, and that was Azure OpenAI. We talked about how you can bring your own data and chat against that. And all of this is part of a tutorial that we'll have a link to at the end of this. So although I'm only going to have about 15 or so minutes to actually go through this with you, there is a full-on tutorial that you can all go through that'll walk you through step by step. Now, this time, though, we have already covered a little bit on Azure Communication Services and how to set that up in the Azure portal. Very simple to set up. I'll go back there in just a moment. And then last time I actually made a phone call kind of live from an app, to my phone, if you can see that on the camera here. And that was a nice feature if you need phone calling. But the next kind of level of that is, these days, especially my boys, it's like, don't call dad, just send me a text. It's kind of a sad state, I suppose, but it's reality that we do send a lot of SMS. So we're going to talk about how you could do that from a custom app. And that's really what we're after. Now, kind of looking forward, next week, we're going to start a whole new thing. We're going to get into organizational data. And what we're going to talk about here is how you can actually use Microsoft Graph Toolkit to bring in data as users interact, for instance, with a data grid. So we'll talk about that a little bit more starting next week. All right, so for today, this will be our last session on Azure Communication Services. And I want to mention just a couple things. I mentioned that you can do phone calling. You can send SMS messages. You can do email. But you can do more than that, actually. You can set up full-on call centers, literally, with this technology, and they have that available. But you can also do things like audio video calling from an app. You could add live chat capabilities. Pretty much if it's communication, this is going to support it in general. So check out the docs. They actually have some really nice quick starts. I'm going to show you one of those in just a moment here with SMS that'll really help you get started with this. So with that, let me go ahead and run back to our demo app. And again, some of you have seen this a bit, others may not have, but let me just walk you through really quickly. So first off, here's where we are on the tutorial on the sending email and SMS. Just to give you an idea, this is kind of what it will walk you through, and it'll walk you through step by step, have a lot of hints and tips along the way. So feel free to check that out. I'll give you a link at the end. But what I wanted to show you first was when you go to the Azure portal, let me actually zoom that one just a bit more for you. I've already created an Azure Communication Services resource. So you could literally type communication and you'll see it right there. Super easy to set up. I don't know, less than probably 60 seconds or something like that. Now, the next step to that, though, is if you want to do phone calling or if you want to do SMS, then you need a phone number. And there's two types of phone numbers you could set up. You could set up local or you could set up toll free. And so if I hit get here, you can walk through a little wizard. Let me just pick what I would do. Let it load here. All right, and then what are we doing? Is it an application making the calls or a person? Because it does depend on the SMS or the phone calls. Now, I'm going to say an application in this case. And like I said, you can actually pick, do you want just a local number? Is it for local businesses, for example? Or is it something that you want that toll-free number to do? So we can actually do that. Now, on the calling, we could say, yeah, I want to receive calls, but you could also make calls, which is what I showed last week. In this case, though, what I want to show you is right here. Send and receive SMS. Now, the demo I'm going to show you in just a moment, it only sends. Okay, it's kind of like you could send out, hey, your appointment is at 1 p.m. Today. In fact, pretty much I'd say every doctor or dentist I go to lately, they send those reminder SMS messages. Well, this is a perfect technology for that. Maybe you just want to send though, and that's it. Now, what I wanted to mention, I'm only going to show the send part of it. But if you want to receive, what this does is it uses Azure Event Grid. And with Event Grid, as a notification comes in that, hey, you received a message, that can actually be hooked to an Azure function. And let me just show you that really quickly. There's a tutorial in the quick starts on sending an SMS message. Now, I'm going to talk through that. But I also wanted to show you that there's a receive and reply. So you literally could now integrate some AI into this possibly to get a message, figure out what they're talking about, get that data, and then send a response. So there's a lot of automation that can be done here. And another thing just to kind of throw out there is WhatsApp support. So that's even another option that you can do. But for now, I just wanted to point out that what this does, if we come on down, is this uses an event grid trigger with Azure Functions. So that, again, when an SMS message comes in from like a customer, you could be notified, your Azure function you would write, and they show an example right here. That function would be called, and then you can get who's it to, who's it from, and what's the message. And now you can act upon that and do something. Now, again, the demo I'm going to do in just a moment here, it's just going to send, but just keep in mind you could do both, which is super cool. Now, in addition to that, you can also come in and I'm going to go ahead and cancel this because I already have one set up. But you could set up an email domain, and it could either be a custom email domain, or you can have an Azure generated one that you can just use. Now, most of us, if it's a business, are obviously going to go with a custom domain. But if you just want to try this out, you can actually come to connect domain, follow the wizard, or you can do the following if you want to set up email. Instead of typing communication services, type email communication services right there. And then you could walk through setting up your own email resource that you can then send emails through. Now, I'm not going to have time to walk through that, but the tutorial does. So if you're interested, it'll show you how to get started. Now, all of that to show you the following. And for some reason, my bar is being blocked here. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to drag this guy over, move this back up. There we go. So in the application, for those that haven't seen this, this demonstrates three things. It demonstrates AI. It demonstrates communication. So we have not only the phone calling, which you can do live phone calling, but also email and SMS. So what I'm going to do here is this uses Azure OpenAI to generate some starter email or SMS messages for customers. And if you're interested and missed that, not only will the tutorial walk you through how to set that up and how it's in the app, but there's also recordings of the community calls we had that will walk you through that as well. Like I said, we're on session 8. So let's go ahead and just kind of type what they have here. Order is delayed, 2 days or something like that. And I want to help my customer service or whoever it is generate a subject, a body, and then also an SMS message. Now you'll notice this one's quite a bit smaller. But what this will use now is if I hit send email, this will send an email to the customer, and it would use this body. We could edit it. But what I want to focus on is more on the SMS part. So I'm going to go ahead and hit send here, and it just sent it. We'll talk about why that was so fast, by the way, and give it a second. And you may or may not be able to see it on my camera, but there we go. It just came in. So I doubt you'll be able to see this too well, but there's a little SMS message there from my toll-free number. And it says exactly what's on the screen here. It says, "Hi, Jane, your order's delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience," blah, blah, blah. All right, so that's kind of what we're talking about is what if you want to integrate that type of functionality into your app? And keep in mind, you could even have them respond to that potentially. You've all probably seen with like doctors, for example, physicians. When I get mine, typically it'll be like, 1 for confirm you can make the appointment, 2 if you want to cancel or some other scenario like that. Well, you could actually build that in as well to automate that process with Azure Communication Services. All right. So now that we've seen that, let's spend the remaining about 5 minutes or so kind of walking through. So what's going on here? Well, in the app, there's a client side part of this, and there's a server side. Now, the server side is actually handling the SMS and the email, and I'll explain why in a moment. But I do want to remind everyone that was here last week, the phone calling, well, that has to go in the browser, of course, because you need access to the audio device of the browser. But with the SMS and the email, there's a couple ways to do it. I'm going to be using the connection string from Azure Communication Services. So let me show you that real quick. If I go back into my resource, and this is my ACS resource. This one does not have the phone number, but I have another one that does. If I come down to keys, just like any Azure service pretty much, you'll see this connection string. And there's a couple ways you can do this. In this case, I'm using the connection string. There's even other ways where you could set up a managed identity and do it that way, but for now we'll go with the connection string. So what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing that connection string right here from an environment file. Now you might stick that in Azure Key Vault and pull it from there. In this case, I'm assuming that the server where this is running actually has an environment variable already loaded, and I'm just going to pull from that. So it just depends on how your company likes to do it. But what I want to call your attention to is up top here. So notice that we have an Azure Communication Identity. We talked about this a little last week for those that were here, but I'll review it again. And then we have this Azure Communication Email and Azure Communication SMS. Now these two right here are going to be the clients that would allow you to either send the email or send the SMS message. And you're going to see it's like really simple to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is I can't just send an SMS message with a phone number. I mean, that wouldn't be very secure. So I need to get a token and a user identity. You'll see that code right here. So notice we're going to create this communication identity client, feed it a connection string, create a user, get a token, and do it that way. Now that's used actually for the phone calling, okay? Because I can't pass the connection string. Well, I could, but I don't want to pass the connection string down to the browser because that would be very insecure, right? So this is used as an API that the phone calling part could call, and then we get that token in the user identity, and then it can make the call, okay? But for the email, look what we're doing. We're creating a new email client, and then we're just feeding it the connection string directly because this is a server-side API. Now, what we're going to do here is what you would expect with an email. Like if you're going to send an email, what do you got to do, folks? Well, you're going to have probably the sender address. Okay. In this case, I have it in an environment file because it's a demo, but this would probably be dynamic. You're going to send the subject and what is the type? Is it plain text? Is it HTML? Those type of things. And then who is it going to? Well, the to takes an array. And of course, you could have multiple recipients. And you could do BCC and CC and all that fun stuff too. So this is pretty much analogous, I'm going to argue, to any email thing you've ever tried to do. You're going to have the sender, you're going to have the subject, you're going to have the body, and then you're going to send it. Now, what we're going to do then is just say begin send. Now, why begin send? And what you see the await here, and you might notice an async up on the function. Well, this, of course, is an async process. We don't want to lock up the API while it sends because it possibly could be sending to a lot of people. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I did a little hack here. Remember earlier when I ran it, I said, wow, that returned really fast. Well, that's because I did a little hack. Normally, you'll wait for it to return because you might want the sender ID. It actually gives you a unique identifier for that send. You might then log that, put it in a database, something like that, so that you can actually troubleshoot if you need to. Now, what I did is I just returned kind of an instant after 500 millisecond response, and I hard-coded the ID. But if you wanted to wait and get it, you would just comment this out, comment this in, and it would just add a few more seconds to it because it's going to take a little time to finish the send and then get you back the ID. All right, so that's what it looks like to send an email. Now, in the last about 2 minutes I have here, let's talk about SMS. It's the same story. We're going to create an SMS client, okay? And I want to emphasize that there are .NET clients and Python and JavaScript, and I think there's Java and others. So while this is TypeScript, you could pretty much choose your language to do this. So we feed it that connection string again, and then we call send in this case. And notice from, okay, so this is the ACS phone number. I'm pulling that from an environment file I have down here. And then my to phone number, this is actually hard-coded to be me because, it's a demo, folks. So I'm sending that to me. And then this is the message that Azure OpenAI generated, put into the web page. And then that was sent to the server side. Of course, the user could have edited the message. And then we send it off. And that's it. It's literally like right there to send an SMS message. Now, the last thing I do want to mention with this is starting early November, phone numbers, and this is a good thing, I think. Phone numbers need to be verified. What do I mean by that? Well, if you come on down, you're going to see this regulatory documents. And this is something that you can create a new application, and basically your company would submit that, hey, we are the ones that are going to be sending the SMS messages. Here's why we're doing it. And obviously it's an effort to cut back on all the spammed, SMS message. We don't want anybody just sending SMS. So just as a heads up, if you're already using this, kind of be aware that you want to submit your regulatory document. And if you're not using it, starting early November, they're going to require that you validate the phone number. Basically that you associate it with a person or company who has been validated. So keep that in mind. So I hope that gives everybody an idea about what's possible with ACS. And if you want to get more information, again, that was this step right there to the left. You can, you can scan that code, but scan this code right here, or you could just go to this AKA MS link right here. Now, in the last thing before I wrap up here, I want to mention, if you go to this link below, aka.ms, I'll put this in the chat. This is a little bonus thing for you. We have a Copilot Adventures coming up. Now, this will be GitHub Copilot, but it's coding puzzles that you're going to solve with GitHub Copilot. So if you're interested and you do Visual Studio, we're going to have a stream for that. If you do VS Code, we're going to have a stream for that. So feel free to check out the repo and you'll see a link where you can register. So with that, let me turn it back over because I'm like a minute over. Sorry, Fabian. I'll give you back the time though. Thanks for having me.
No apologies, man. That is awesome stuff. Really appreciate it. I think you've extended it since the last time I tried it. So I'm definitely have to go try some of the new stuff that you plugged inside here. Really cool stuff. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan, for doing that. The 8th series it was a great journey going all the way through. But right now we're going to turn it over to Mounika and Waldek, who's going to be talking up to us about deploying a custom Microsoft Graph connector from what they built last week. Mounika?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Most important thing, question of the hour. Can you see my screen, which should be my screen coming next to your screen, a screen nearby you? Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear? Can you read the text? Is it too big, too small? Good. You're on mute, Fabian. I can't hear you. Perfect. I take that as a yes. All right. So, last week we told you all about connectors, like why they are important, what is the benefit, why would you care? TLDR, they help you find all info you've got in your workplace. They make it easier for you to find it, and then soon you will even be able to use AI on all of it, right? So to get really relevant answers, relevant to your work based on basically everything you all know in your work. And the way to do it is to use a connector, right? To import all of the content that you've got in the workplace into Microsoft 365, right? So what is a connector? Well, a connector consists of few blocks, right? Like it has a connector code, right? So basically, like, that is kind of the engine, the logic that actually makes it work. Then it's got, of course, like the external source, the source from which you want to import the content. Then it's got an Entra app, right, which kind of registers this on the Microsoft Cloud, right? So that is how it gets access to Microsoft 365, which is the last part. It connects to Microsoft Graph APIs to create a connection, deploy schema, and import the content, right? So these are kind of the building blocks that we talked about the last time of a connector. It has a connection with like things like name, description, schema that kind of defines the shape of the data you ingest, and then actually the content itself that you bring over from the external system to Microsoft 365. So in the next hour and a half, you will see live how do we set everything up. The only problem is that we don't have an hour and a half. We've got 13 minutes, so I better keep moving. All right, so first things first, we get back here. What is it that we need? We need an Entra app, right? And one more thing. We're going to illustrate all of that based on a sample that is already available to you, which will allow you to ingest some of my blog posts into your M365 tenant so that you can easily search through the things that I wrote. And it's not really that exciting, but it's just an easy thing for you to test. You don't need resources in Azure and anything like that to start with. You can definitely get to that eventually. But for starter to have that really easy F5 experience, you can use the example that you will see in the next minute or two, right? So again, the first thing that we need is to create an Entra app. Well, typically the way you would go about it is you would do what? Somebody would give you a doc, and then you would get step-by-step clicking, in the Azure portal creating the app. That's boring. How about we do another thing? I've got here a PowerShell script that we do exactly the same thing for me. So what is it that we need to do? We need an Entra app. That app needs to have Graph API access with two scopes, right? It needs to be able to create external connections, and it needs to be able to write external items. So these are the two roles you see here, and they are super encrypted in GUIDs, but these are actually the GUID or the IDs of these scopes, right? To make it easier for me to build in the script and not have to resolve them to their names, right? So we're going to create the Entra app with this name. We're going to grant it the scopes. We're going to grant the admin consent, which we need. Then we're going to create a secret. Again, like I'm running this on the local box, so it's perfectly fine. Typically in a cloud, maybe you would use managed identity or some other way to access that. In this case, to keep it really easy, I'm going to create a secret, and I'm going to store it in my .NET app so that I can easily access the values without having to store them anywhere in plain text. So it's kind of safe. All right, let me run this script. 3, 2, 1. And with that, I am in PowerShell, set up PS1. So now I'm going to use the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK to create an Entra app with all the different things that I need in order to be able to build for the connector engine that I've got to create a connection and then import the content. Okay, we are ready. And we created an app with this ID. Let's double check that it's actually there, because maybe the values are fake. Who would have thought? All right, I am in the Azure portal. Let me go to Entra ID. In here, let me find application registrations. Here, let me browse for the GUID that I just created from the Outlook. There you go. There is the app that we created. We created it just now. There you go. The date does not lie. And then in here, we can see what? We needed two things. We needed API access. So API permissions here, we've got, again, these two scopes that we need, right? So there's the external connection read write, because we want to create a connection, and then external item read write, because we're going to import the content to Microsoft 365. So 1, 2, we needed a secret. So there you go, secret that we've got, 1GO, and then it's here. Oh my God, now you can copy it and you can do things with it. Be my guest. Perfectly fine. So we've got that in place. What is the next step? If we go to README, there's really cool thing about that. Like we have all instructions here, so I don't need to keep in mind any of that. All right, let me change the directory to that and then build a project. Now, why do I need to do that? Well, the reason I need to do that is because here at the end of the script, I added these steps. I stored the values in project, but now it's not a part of my code. So in other words, I need to rebuild it so that there's association between project, which is here. So here in CS-proj, when you do that, when you run the .NET user secrets init, well, what it does is here, it will add a GUID that associates the project, the app, with internal store that it's got where the values are actually stored. So we need that reference in the binary that we will use to run this. So with that, let me do that, and let me do .NET build. And I will rebuild the project, and I will, oh, sorry, I was supposed to be doing that. I need to go back. I got ahead of myself there. I need to first do .NET build, and then change directory. Now, I put all the steps here, but it would be actually good if I actually follow them, right? So here, .NET build first, then change directory. There you go. All right, so project rebuild, no errors, everything works. Let's get back to our directory, which was bin debug net7. All right, the first thing that we will do is we will create external a connection where we will be then, which we will then use to import the content. Like, what does actually the connection do, right? So what are a part of it? If we go here to our code, we have a representation of what that exactly is. Connection configuration is here. So we will have ID, name, description. These things are really important, not now immediately, but eventually Copilot will use them to find out which data source invoke when. So you really want to ensure that these are meaningful strings as opposed to rubbish that you would put because nobody will see it anyway. Well, AI will. So you definitely want to ensure about these things. Now we have some other things that aren't important now. And then the final things that we've got here is the idea to, or the ability to have a custom adaptive card so that we can see the results in search. All right, so we've got that in place. Let's create the connection. So we will do connector, create dash connection. And this will do two things. It will create a connection, and then it will create a schema. 3, 2, 1. Let me see if that is doing something already. It's creating connection. That shouldn't take long. There it goes. Connection is created. Schema will be creating. Creating schema will take a minute or two. So if we here refresh, we are now in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center under Home, Search and Intelligence data sources, where we can see all connections that we create. Here we are. So here in our code, we've got external connection with ID, mynameblog.net. There you go, mynameblog.net. Here we are. So this is in progress. As I say, this is going to take a minute or two. If we had an hour and a half, I would gladly wait together with you. They tell a joke or two, which aren't that great. We don't have time for that. So with that, let's move on. Typically, you know, going the kitchen show way, there's another one. Right, so this one is blue, just for me, so that I know which one is which. This one is already done, and here what I've done is I changed the ID to 2, so that we don't need to wait. So I already have a connection with the same name, .NET 2, which is ready. So in this place, what it's done, it's got a connection, and I created a schema. So with that, the next step is what? Actually import the content. And in this example, what I will do is here I've got a bunch of articles that I wrote in Markdown, right? So the connector that I have built is going to do what? If I go to content service, right, it's going to, so here's the shape of the post, and basically it will do a few things. So if I go all the way down, right, it's going to extract the content from my source, which in this case are the Markdown files that I've got on my disk. I'm going to change their shape so that they match the schema that I've got. And let's have a quick look at that too, because we skipped it the last part of time, right? So in schema, I've got the different type of stuff that I want to keep track of when I import the content from its source to Microsoft 365. I want to have title. I want to have excerpt. I want to have the image URL to the original article, because if it comes up in search and somebody clicks, I want them to get back to that original item. I want to have its date. I want to have some tags, and that will be it. So these are the different things that I want to keep track of for all the content that I will import, right? So in here, we change the shape from the original shape that we've got in our external source to the shape that we want to keep track in Microsoft 365. And then the final step is load, which is actually uploading the external items to Microsoft 365 using the Microsoft Graph. Let me do that. I don't think I need to rebuild. I think I'm good. So with that, let me just go directly to bin debug that and then say connector load content. And what we will do now is we will see it parse all the items, uploading them to Microsoft 365 one by one. And this is actually pretty fast, right? Because like everything is done already. So it's just like single call to Microsoft Graph. As it's uploading, we can see it here, right? So here we've got graph service, client, external, connections, item, put, right? And basically the item that we upload here is the external item that we upload to Microsoft 365. All right, with that thing in place, last thing that we've got left is actually be able to see this stuff because we've imported that, but then like it will be nice for it to come back in search and be available to AI, right? So in here, let's click this link. So with that, the content will be now available in all search results that we've got, right? So we don't need to create a vertical. We can just basically find it in all results that we've got. And here in search, so we are now in Microsoft 365. Let's do search. Let's do search for something that I wrote. Let's say how to test API. And there you go. So this is one item that is this external item that we've ingested. You can see here is evidence. It's coming from my blog. It is my adaptive card that I built with an image, title, URL, modified date. And if I click on this, you will be taken to my blog. There you go, right? So that is how you can end-to-end run a connector that creates a connection, provisions, schema, and imports the content from whatever data source you want so that it's available in Microsoft 365 for you to be able to easily find stuff, discover stuff, but also make it available to AI. So with that, we are on time. Thanks again for your time. If there are any questions that are unanswered, we can take them in the chat, or you can always ping me afterwards. And again, all of this is available to you, so you can run it by yourself. And I would really encourage you to, because it's super, super cool. Thank you.
Waldek, amazing presentation. And just so you guys know as well, too, the session that I'm going to be doing with Vesa, I actually spoke with Waldek. Was it last week, I think, Waldek? I said, dude, you know, the stuff that you've done has just made my lift so much easier for me creating stuff. I'm just going to take your demo and then repurpose it for what I'm going to be doing. And, you know, and then tie that into what Vesa is doing as well. This is amazing work. You know, a lot of effort went into this, especially to make it look so easy and seamless. Thank you, Waldek.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, so we transition now over to Robert Perillo, who you know, was part of the Power AI Hack contest and winner, and he's going to talk to us about the Better Together solution that he created. Robert,
awesome.
Floor is yours.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you again. My name is Robert Perillo. I'm a modern workplace developer here at the Pate Group. I mainly work with SharePoint Framework React. I also have experience with Power Automate, Power Apps, as well as building Azure functions. At the Pate Group, we are a consulting firm of Microsoft 365 experts based in Cincinnati, Ohio. As a certified Microsoft Solutions partner for modern work, we offer an extensive array of services, such as strategic deployment planning, seamless migration, comprehensive training, platform work, branding, custom development, and all that good stuff. I'm thrilled to be selected as one of the Power Platform AI Hack winners. My solution, CodeScribe, has been selected as the Better Together use case winner. So I'll give a rundown of how the solution works, what it does, and then give a brief explanation of the technologies that support it. So we'll just dive right in. So CodeScribe, it's an automated code review tool. It analyzes a code snippet and returns two outputs. The first output is a code summary that gives you a quick overview of what the code does. And the second output is a commented code block that explains each step of the code in detail. And all this happens within the closed loop of your organization's network, so your data and code is safe and secure. This solution came to mind as I work in a lot of environments with tons of legacy code, and a lot of these clients tend to have pretty strict data privacy policies. So when I've come across a block of code in the wild and there's little to no documentation, nor are there comments, and sometimes the variables are non-descriptive, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a tool that could take the code as an input and help me digest it and understand, what's happening right off the bat, all while keeping security a priority. And sure, tools exist like ChatGPT and Bard, and they may help with similar prompts and coaching, but they transmit your code externally. So instead, this solution utilizes your company's personal OpenAI instance to keep the code within your organization. In regards to the technologies, the solution uses Power Apps as the front end. In the back end, a Power Automate flow and an Azure OpenAI model. So essentially, the Power App takes the code input, which triggers the flow. The flow then takes the input and makes an HTTP request to the Azure OpenAI model with a specific prompt on how to analyze and return the data. Then when the data is returned to the flow parses through that response before sending it back to the app to display these two outputs. So let's do a little demo. All right, so this is the app here. I'm going to take a code snippet from one of my SharePoint framework projects that uses TypeScript. So see how it goes. So what's happening in the back end is it's hitting that flow, which is making a call to that model. And as you can see, it returns a summary of the actual code snippet and what's going on. And then it gives you the exact code snippet back with line-by-line comments, so you can see that. And so in a nutshell, that's what it's designed to do. Let's do one more code block so you can see it in action. This one's a little more complex. So again, this is from the same project that uses React. And as you can see, it returns a summary along with comments for each of these lines. And if you don't like the response, you can generate it again. Obviously, it's just hitting that model once more. And so while this runs, I'll kind of show you the back end here. When you hit generate, it sends the code snippet to the flow. And within this flow, it's hitting an HTTP method to the AI model. And this is the specific prompt that it's being instructed with. That you're an assistant that helps users document their code, and to break this response down into two separate objects. And further down, what I'm doing is I'm splitting that response into two separate items so that I can return it back to the Power App to ingest. So essentially, that's what it's doing. And you can see all the lovely comments that it leaves for you. If you have no idea what the code is doing, this will give you some idea. And yeah, that's CodeScribe in a nutshell. So thanks for having me. I'd like to thank the Power Platform team for putting this AI hack together. Copilot and these AI tools have been really cool to work with, and here at Pay Group, we'll continue to build on these new features. So thanks all, and I'll pass it back to you.
That was fascinating, Robert. I have one question for you. Do you know what your token count was for the solution?
I forget what I limited it to. I really don't off the top of my mind.
No worries. We can do that asynchronously. As once I saw the length of your prompt and then sending the code in, and then the difference, small code, large code, I said, I wonder what this limit is for the tokens that he's using. That'll be an interesting thing to know. But great demo, great use case. You know what I love also as well? The GIF animation that you have when you're loading it and when you're also waiting for it. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, let me go ahead and reshare from current slide. And where's my share button? Go 1 second. Share and this guy here. And then from current slide. There we go. Go ahead, load. All righty. So we saw some great presentations here today. Don Wahlin, Waldek, and from Robert closing us out. For next week on November the 7th, we do have Dan Wahlin coming back talking to us about integrating your organizational data into Azure OpenAI services with Microsoft Graph. We have Ragev Misra talking to us again as one of an external from the Power AI Hack Winner, the best diversity, equity, and inclusion solution, DEI solution. And we have Vesa coming to talk to us a little bit about our important and existing SharePoint framework solution and continuing development into the Teams toolkit. And that's going to be something similar to what we're going to be doing also in ESPC. We invite you all to join our official Discord server, by taking a screenshot of that link or going to aka.ms/community/discord. Here you can join into the conversation, give us some ideas and things that you'd like to see, and just another medium for us to stay connected outside of the Tuesday calls. We also invite you to give us feedback about the calls, rate the call content. And we always want to improve what we're doing here. No matter how good something is, you can always make it a little bit better using the link aka.ms/community/call/feedback. All items, we'll give it the due diligence and iterate upon. So we'd like to thank you for everyone who took the time to join here today. I know for some of us, it is way in the afternoon getting ready to go to do trick or treating. Some of it is just starting the day off. The recording will be available within 24 hours on the YouTube channel, aka.ms/community/videos. If you're not subscribing, please consider subscribing today. And follow us on Twitter as well at M365PNP to see our updates on LinkedIn. Use https ak.ms/community/li. Again, the next meeting will be on November the 7th at 8 a.m. Pacific. And all available community calls can be seen and reviewed at ak.ms/community/calls. And with that, I'd like to thank you again. Take care, and I will see you again next week. Cheers, everyone.